Hello, folks. Casey Callahan, podcast producer, taking over today. And I have a really exciting guest for us on 6 Degrees of Associations today. We're joined by Trevor Mitchell. He is the executive director of American Mensa, which I am really curious to learn about that organization and everything that he's all about as a real accomplished associations management professional. Trevor, welcome to the show. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and Mensa?
All right. Thanks, Casey. It's a pleasure to be here, and I'm excited to have this conversation today. I'm an association professional. I've been in this industry for about 18 years now. I've worked at 2 different associations, but as you mentioned, I'm currently at American Mensa. We are the organization for those who score in the top 2% of IQ tests. So our organization has been around in the U.S. for about 60 years, internationally for about 77 at this point. My membership ranges in age from my youngest being about 3 years old to all those up to 106. I have some members who have been around since the beginning of this organization, as it was founded here in the U.S. And we solely exist to provide an opportunity for those individuals to have a community of their own of like-minded people. They find their culture, they find their equals within this group where they feel normal. They feel as if though they don't have to be anybody but who they are because their brain processes information differently. And watching them interact and watching them really engage into what we provide for them as a community is really exciting and really motivating.
Yeah, that's outstanding. And I know a lot of listeners to our program may be association professionals themselves, and a lot of them might be working in membership. I know that I have a membership background myself in the association world, and I'm super interested in the membership process with Mensa because we're so used to the recruitment and retention process being, somewhat like I would call it maybe like an outbound process, like you want to go out there and recruit the members. Now, with Mensa being such an exclusive membership group that you actually have to qualify for, how does that membership process of recruitment kind of differ from other more traditional association membership styles?
Absolutely. So it's funny you bring that up because I started at the organization as the director of membership, and membership is my background. And this was something I kind of dug into myself because it is not the typical framework that we see when talk about membership organizations. That having to qualify for membership is definitely can be seen as a potential barrier and a challenge because one of the things we have to look at is, and I use it in terms of funnels. We have 2 different funnels, pipelines we have to get people through. One is to get them just to identify that they are interested in the organization in any sort of fashion. So we have to get them just create a prospect for them. And then once we get them to do that, convince them to either take our test that we have to offer to see if they qualify, or see if they have a test that they've taken in the past that will qualify them. And we have roughly about 150 tests out there, depending on what you took at what age you took, whatever that will help qualify you. And so we try to working through those things. Like we have a lot of barriers to entry. The first thing usually comes up, people like, I was always told I was smart in school, or I'm curious, but I'm not really sure. I get the whole, I don't want to take the test and fail. Quick spoiler alert, you can't fail an IQ test. IQ tests do not measure your body of knowledge and understanding. It's not Jeopardy. Just because people do well in Jeopardy doesn't mean they have high IQs. It just means they are really good at retaining information and reciting it back in terms of that trivia format. Don't get me wrong. We do have a lot of our members who are good at trivia, but it's not, it doesn't correlate there. But what it's more about is how your brain processes information, how it gets accurate information, and the quicker you do it and the more consecutive correct answers you get is what moves your IQs up and down the scale. So we really spend a lot of time convincing people that they're not going to fail. If they don't get in, it's not life or death. That it's just really about understanding how these tests measure intelligence and how it will qualify you or not qualify you for membership. So there's a lot of lead time that goes into these things and moving them through the funnel. I'll tell you where we go after the most, and is actually our easiest point of entry is schools, because children are identified in a school level environment and are tested for various giftedness programs. Listening to the radio this morning, and they had a gifted and talented teacher on there for some other segment. But I was like, ooh, like I was capturing her name real quick and where she worked. As soon as I got done, and emailed it to my director of membership saying we should check her out. Like, who her class might be part of it. So because they have those test results, if we tell them like, hey, your kids are going to qualify if they have this, it just moves them through that pipeline a lot quicker. And so we really are focusing on identifying those barriers of entry, and then how do we work with it to reduce them and create that, get past that mental block of, I may not be good enough or I may not qualify. And how do we navigate through those pieces? So it's this whole piece. I will tell you, once they do qualify, 85% of them join within the first 30 days. So we don't have an issue of them joining once they qualify. It's more of just getting them through that process. And I'll tell you, it takes about 8 to 10 months for a typical prospect to go through, for the time they enter the prospect pool to the time they actually do some sort of testing with us, because it's just that mental hurdle we have to navigate.
Yeah, and assuming, it's such a small percentage of the population that would qualify for Mensa, tell me about what kind of value members can get out of belonging. I'm assuming it's some sort of community aspect, given it's such a small minority of the population that qualifies, and they can kind of be like-minded individuals with each other in that community setting. Like, what else is a good reason for folks in that small percentage to want to join?
So, I mean, you absolutely hit it right off the top there. It is about the community and about creating a community in a space where they feel accepted for who they were. Many of them, particularly my long-term members, grew up in an era, in an environment where giftedness wasn't always celebrated. It wasn't acknowledged. So they were put into other classrooms, or they were advanced several grades. They weren't given an opportunity to really navigate and develop those social norms and social cues that the rest of the population does. So what we provide is that environment where they can interact, where they can engage, and they're able to explore whatever they want to explore in their topics. So one of the things that really happened in the pandemic for us was our special interest groups. We have 145 special interest groups that are all online based, all volunteer run. There's no big structure to it, but more of like allowing them to come together around a topic. And they range from people who are interested to know about everything Disney and Broadway musicals, to generations, to religion, whatever strikes your interest, there's something for it. And these are the kinds of communities that allow them to do this, because our members like to go really deep into a topic, and that's what we provide for them. So when you look at our conference, my funniest stories I always tell is whenever they ask me, well, what happens at a Mensa conference? What do you do? And I said, well, we do some of the things you would expect. There's lots of gameplay. We have a lot of board games set up from our board game competition that we do. There's puzzles, but there's speakers. I was like, but what's interesting is our speakers from year to year are never the same. I go to other professional conferences where they're very much this is what's hot on the industry right now. Here are the trends we're talking about. It's very, very specific. Ours changes year after year. One year I went in, and in one room they were acting out a play that they had just wrote. And then it goes directly to the next room, and there's a gentleman who was a prisoner of war in Vietnam, and talking about his experiences, what it was like to be a prisoner of war and then be set free. And then you go into the next room, and they were talking about how to walk your walk with your best high heels. And you see this hodgepodge of topics, but there's just something for everybody. One of our most popular ones was on lock picking. And we had to keep adding it in each day of the conference, and people were ordering from Amazon their own lock picking kits, having to deliver to the hotels so they could go to the session again and practice their skills. It's that kind of thing. So we just provide this environment where they are free to be who they truly and authentically are, in ways that they don't get elsewhere in the world. And so that's what brings them in. Granted, based off the population, we should have about 6 million members. Like that would be our market of membership. We're only about 50,000. So we're clearly just skimming the surface of the potential people that are members. But it's those who are looking for that community, those who are trying to find people like themselves, those who are, we get a lot of people when they get out of college and are moving to a new city. They remember they were a Mensa member before and they rejoin because that's a way for them to start making friends. So we just kind of serve in that capacity to help let them be connectors and create their own chosen family within the community.
Absolutely. And you are someone that is no stranger to the association space. Before I continue asking you more questions kind of about building community and member benefits and stuff like that, why don't you tell us a little bit about where you were at before you came to Mensa and kind of your journey in associations and how you discovered the association world?
So it's an interesting story, and I'll try to condense it down. I will tell you, when I started, even in college, my whole purpose in life, when I found whatever career I was going to do, is like I just wanted to work with people. I just knew that was something I wanted to do. And so I went through school, got my business degree, and when I started as a nonprofit in Columbia, Missouri, right out of school, it was grant funded. Did that for a couple of years as their marketing director. And then I moved to Kansas City, and what was interesting is associations found me. It was calling to me. I just didn't know it. Every place I went for an interview ended up being an association. I didn't seek it out. It wasn't intentional, but it's where I ended up. And the first association I ended up working for was called ARMA International. It's the Association of Records Managers and Administrators, focusing on those who handle both physical and electronic records within large corporations. So I started out in membership and focusing on chapters of volunteers. And that's where it started and where I fell in love with it. And I knew about 4 or 6 months in, I was like, this is it. Like this is what I was meant to do. I said I wanted to work with people. I wanted to impact people's lives. This was it. And from there, I just jumped headfirst in and I did all the things that you're supposed to do. I got my CAE. I volunteered at ASAE. I was in Kansas City at the time, so I was on the Kansas City board of Society. So Kansas City Society of Association Executives. And about, I think it was about 10 years in, I had done various things in the organization, moved up, moved around. And then I got a call to come to Mensa. And so my career took me to Texas, which is where I'm in today. Started there as director of membership and strategy. And after a couple of years, our CEO left to go take on another association challenge. And I stepped into those roles and have been there ever since. And I continue to stay involved with ASAE. I am now currently the chair of the Texas Society, Society of Association Executives. And I continue to give back to our community, but it's this, at times doesn't feel like a career. It doesn't feel like a job. It just feels like this is what I'm supposed to do with my life. And so that brings me a lot of joy and a lot of passion. Gives me a lot of heartache at times because it can be draining, but it's why I wake up every single day and do what I do.
Yeah, and I think listeners of this podcast will notice a theme where someone who is like yourself, working in associations now for a while and loves it and wants to stick with it, kind of discovered associations by chance. And what we're noticing in these conversations is that what's keeping people in associations is feeling connected to the mission.
Mm-hmm.
And I think in a time where everyone's trying to retain great employees, associations do have a leg up where they have that inherent mission in their work. Did you have any comments on that and how, sticking to the mission helps retain great employees?
I do. I think that's something that is really, really important for us to keep in mind is you could have the greatest skilled individuals, but if they aren't connected to the organization and to that ability to impact and serve a particular industry or the needs of members, you lose that benefit. And that's what really is important, is seeing your staff come together, rally around, like, we got to do this for the membership. We have this awesome idea that revolutionizes and the industry and has this major impact. Those kinds of things really speak out to those individuals. And it's a benefit that a lot of organizations outside of the associations field don't have. And I see people who chase money or chase a position and a title, and so they'll leave the industry and they immediately realize they made the wrong decision because it was not in line with who they were as a person, and that they didn't realize how much satisfaction they got out of it. And so I think it's important for association to be able to nurture that and utilize that as part of it. Granted, we still have to try and compensate as best as possible, even though we are not-for-profit organizations. But that is definitely something that can speak to them and help engage them. That passion then drives the outputs that the staff have that creates that meaningful impact to the members.
Absolutely. I think you said that very well. And, is there a time like where an associations that you've heard of, I know that you're very involved in your professional development, that you've heard, employees leaving because it's one thing to leave to chase, maybe more money or more prestige in the for-profit sector or something. But, do you ever hear about people leaving because they just don't feel like their association is enough mission focused, and maybe they're getting away from that mission, and that's a problem?
I have heard that. I think a lot of it really comes down to, in that regards, of a leadership situation where either the board or the volunteers or even the senior leadership have lost that connection with the mission and are able to connect it back to the rest of the staff and helping them see how what they're doing is creating that impact. That is something I think we as leaders need to do, is to help make sure we show that, yes, you answering the phones and emails has this impact on our membership number and our growth opportunities. And you made that person's day by answering this. From a Mensa standpoint, a lot of our members don't have trouble with very social interactions. So they will call us up to pay their credit card renewal, even though they can do it online, because they just want to talk to somebody. So it's about helping them connect that why their job and their role is so important to the overall success of the organization. When people are leaving, it's usually because of that. They aren't feeling that connection. They aren't being helped with that. I mean, sometimes it's hard to really put the dots together, but good leaders can help navigate that.
And how can associations just in general, stay on top of the changing times? I'm assuming a lot of it involves listening to your members and seeing what they want out of the organization and in kind of, adjusting accordingly. What are your thoughts there?
So I think for associations, what we have to do is we do have to keep our one finger on the pulse of what the membership is saying, but also thinking about where the members need to be and help pushing those conversations forward. The challenge with listening to what members are saying is we tend to hear from that loud vocal minority. We don't think about the other percentage of our membership. So you think about the 80-20 rule, we're probably hearing from about 20% of it, but we're not hearing from the other 80%. So while we want to keep our listening to those who are talking, we need to understand, like, what are the trends here? What are the best practices here? And how do we get more input from the other 80%? As well as those who are peripheral, maybe possibly coming into the organization, that we're moving it in the right way. If we are so focused on what they're saying today, we're already behind the 8 ball. And as things continue to change and evolve, not only within our industry and within associations, but with just society and over in general, we're going to be behind. And so we have to help lead them as well as listen to them. So there's a little bit of bringing them along as well as moving along with where they want to go as well. And so we have to find that balancing act, but that is a good way to help us make sure we're staying abreast of what is really needed in our associations to make sure we're remaining relevant and timely for the organization.
Definitely. And what as we work towards wrapping up here, I just want to give you a chance to leave, your final thoughts to any young association professionals out there that are maybe looking to become the next Trevor Mitchell themselves, kind of climb the ladder, so to speak, and get to a formal position of leadership, such as executive director. What advice would you give them? I know I've asked this question before and heard, things along the lines of being involved with their own professional societies and their own associations. I think that's a good place to start. Any other thoughts on that?
Absolutely. No, I agree. That's a great place to start. And what I would say is two things. One is let the journey happen. It's really easy to get caught up and want to advance quickly. That was something I did. And I think if I would have taken my time and paid a little bit more attention to certain things along the way, I could be even better than I am today. So definitely take that time and really enjoy the journey and don't rush it. The second thing I will say is that we're focused on becoming a generalist rather than a specialist. We all start in specialist roles. I started in a membership role where I focused on volunteers and chapters. But over the course of my career, I moved into a director level position, oversaw all of membership, including customer service, recruitment, retention. I ended up overseeing government affairs, technology, sponsorships, events. I started to see how they all play together. So as you move into those more senior roles, you need to be able to take that higher level position and be able to take your specialist knowledge and apply it at a more general level. And so using opportunities like ASAE, your various societies, to gain some of those skills you may not be able to get in your own organization will help prepare you whenever you're going for those opportunities and step into those roles where you don't have that knowledge. And it's a game changer, and it's something I encourage everybody to do. And everybody that I told that to has come back and said that has been very, very helpful.
Absolutely. And Trevor, one thing we do here in the spirit of 6 Degrees of Associations is we always like to ask our guests if there's someone in the association world or adjacent to the association world, doesn't necessarily have to be an association professional, that really inspires you and that you would recommend us talk to in a future episode so we can learn from them. Is there anyone you wanted to mention?
Just mentioning one, that's the challenge.
Yeah.
The first thing that comes to mind is a good friend of mine who I think is an amazing professional, started out doing marketing and membership and has grown to working in an association management company, serving as ED for a couple of associations. And that's Sarah Wood. I think she is phenomenal. Not only is she a great professional and very thought-provoking, a lot of things she talks about, but she's just an amazing human being that everybody should get to know.
All right, everyone, you've been listening to Trevor Mitchell. He's the executive director of American Mensa. I will make sure to put a link to that website in the description of today's podcast. Trevor, this has been an amazing conversation. I've actually learned a lot, and I know our listeners have as well. This is awesome. I really appreciate your time today.
Thanks, Casey. I've had a great time as well.